Hello, I'm David Puttnam, and I'm desperately sorry not to be with you in person this afternoon. I should explain why. We have a piece of legislation going through Parliament at the moment, which comes to a vote on today, Wednesday afternoon, and there's no way in the world, much as I could try, I could get back in time for that vote. It is a very, very significant piece of legislation because if it goes against us, my own Labour Party, it could effectively begin the destruction of the trade union movement in the UK. I won't go into the details, but it's, as I said, it's extremely significant. And I couldn't live with myself if literally we lost in Parliament by a single vote simply because I wasn't there. It has, believe it or not, actually has happened, and I never want to have it happen again. So I'm sending you this video as a way of at least getting across to you the slides I was going to use and the arguments that I was going to use. So that's by way of an apology. I believe that we're only just beginning to benefit from, or even in a sense understand, the real implications of the digital revolution. That's not unusual. All revolutions take a while to embed, and all revolutions take a while for the ramifications of them to truly become known. And the digital revolution is no different. So we're going to have to make those adjustments. But what's important is it will offer, and does indeed offer, huge challenges to policymakers and indeed employers. It means changing business models. It means changing the way that politicians deal with and address the electorate, and the way in which the electorate indeed deal with their politicians. We're already seeing that in some extraordinary ways in the United States. Here, where I live in Ireland, there's no question the relationship between politicians and the public is in the process of going through enormous changes. Little surprise then that the world of employment, the whole world of jobs, is also going through similar, quite dramatic changes. The key to this, I believe, and I've believed for 20 years, that's why I made the switch from the movie industry, is education. Our education system have got to address and update themselves in a way that makes them relevant, frankly, to the 21st century. We are still dealing with I would argue, almost a 19th century education system in a 21st century environment, and that catch-up is beginning to take place, but nothing like quickly enough. And the truth is, it will be the teachers who understand how to teach with and use digital technology who will frankly be the pathfinders or the gatekeepers to the world that we're going to have to inherit. And incidentally, there's not an issue here of preference. I live in a very beautiful remote part of Ireland with a community that I value. I'm not suggesting some mad, rabid technological future for all of us. I'm just merely talking about the fact that the jobs of the future will to an extraordinary extent depend on the technological competence and the ability to embrace the digital world that will be required for most people. The example of the way the digital world hasn't caught up is, in a sense, the fact that I'm talking to you like this today. I teach from here, from this desk, from this room, every week to universities, well, say all over the world, in Australia, in Singapore, in the UK, here in Ireland. I teach from my own room seminars on film and television. That's my subject. I teach master's students, which is, I suppose, something of an advantage. I don't have to get involved in marking homework or assessing their work, but nonetheless, the engagement's there, and I'd like to think that I'm having some kind of effect. So clearly, I'm an advocate for a new and different form of education, working with and working off of the benefits that the digital world brings us. Why am I so passionate about it? Because I'm very, very conscious of what could happen to an entire generation that gets left behind, most particularly a generation of Europeans. It's obviously very, very much in my interest to ensure that Europe doesn't get left behind, that doesn't get kind of befuddled and bemused by what's going on in the rest of the world. I've just came back 2 days ago from Hanoi, from Vietnam. I work for and with the British government in Southeast Asia. You would be stunned, I promise you, at the changes that I've seen just in the 3 years that I've been doing my job for the UK government. It is quite extraordinary, the growth and development of that part of the world. And the idea that those 93 million people living in Vietnam are not going to be serious competitors to we in Europe by the year 2025, 2030 is an advanced fantasy. They will be snapping away at our heels, and we jolly well better get our act together and make sure that we are reasonably competitive. The pace of change is obviously quite phenomenal, and I would argue quite demoralising. People don't really like change. I'm no different from anybody else. I get thrown, in a sense, by change. But change is part of our lives. There's no way we can avoid it, and we've really just got to try and adjust to it. A lot of this has been thrown up, and I'm using their slides, in a sense, by the extraordinarily good report on the digital environment that was done by the World Bank. It was actually published on the 6th of February, so it's very recent. And I think they've got a real grip of the nature of the challenge and the way in which we, certainly in Europe, are going to have to address it, although certainly the report itself is aimed at all the countries of the world. One of my favourite books is Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. And those of you who remember it will remember that it starts with these extraordinary words: "It was the best of times and the worst of times." And indeed, that's the way he describes the French Revolution, the fervour of the French Revolution, the hopes that were raised by the French Revolution, and the way that many of those hopes were dashed by the cruelty and the aftermath. I suppose you could equally say that we're living through the best of times and the worst of times right now. The digital opportunities that are out there have never been greater, so the people that can grasp them have got very, very interesting futures to look forward to. However, the people that can't, for whatever reason, either because they don't want to or because they're living in countries or in environments or being educated in a way that doesn't take advantage of the new world, if you want to call it that, for them life is going to be very, very tough. And this is, I think, excellently illustrated in the book that came out recently, The New Machine Age. That's why I've used this particular slide as a way of illustrating what I see to be the challenges that are lying ahead of us. Lastly, I would argue that what we're looking at, in a sense, is a new type of human being. A human being with a different form of cognitive intelligence, a human being with a different range of skills and interests. We sit in the UK in the world of the creative industries. Obviously, I'm very, very involved in the creative industries. I have been all my life. Creative industries in the UK are a fantastic success story, a commercial success story and an export success story. More importantly than that, they represent the kind of jobs that young people really want. I mean, these are the jobs that people are attracted to, that they enjoy doing, that are rewarding, and actually have an end product that you can look at and say, you know what, part of my life was creating or constructing that. So the creative industries are a fantastic success story. And yet, in the UK, what do we find? We find that 77% of the employers in those industries are finding it difficult to employ people with the skills and the attitudes and the complement of skills that they need to fulfill the slots and the opportunities that they believe are out there. So there's a weird paradox here. Here's a very successful industry, full of desirable jobs, and yet somehow or other, the education system, even in the UK, is not providing the workforce that can optimise the extraordinary opportunities that we in Britain have realised are out there and continue to be out there. This is a rapidly growing sector, and frankly, Europe has an opportunity to play a very important role as that sector develops. Lastly, can I just say that I mentioned Vietnam because I happen to know that part of the world very well, but the nature of the challenge for us in Europe is extraordinary. You've now got a situation where most of the world is connected through mobile. There are no longer these vast dark areas where the opportunity to connect with, learn from, engage with the rest of society no longer exists. Basically, the world is now a connected place. That is a wonderful thing, a really wonderful thing, but it does throw up extraordinary and very special challenges for we in Europe. We're used to being, along with the United States, very dominant. We're used to being the big boys in town. We cannot continue to indulge in the fantasy that that will continue forever. The global environment I've just described, the mobile connectivity that now exists, means that every single country in the world by the year 2020, 2030, 2035 will be straightforwardly connecting with and competing with us in Europe. We've got to get our act together. It starts with education. We have an enormous hill to climb. Our education in Europe is nothing like good enough and certainly not equipped to deal with the challenge of the 21st century. That's my message. I'm sorry I've taken rather a long time to get it across. That's what I would have been saying to you this afternoon had I been with you. I'm very sorry that I can't try and justify it or answer questions, but I hope you'll understand that what I am doing is trying to hold back the forces of darkness as they begin to overwhelm my own belief in a socialist Europe. Thank you very much for listening to me.